Hey everybody, Darren with the White Hatter team, and welcome to Thinkable Thursday. And today we're going to talk to Mike Russell. He is the Director of Communications with the Cowichan Valley School District. And we're going to be talking about COVID-19 in school and how they're using social media within their school district. And we're also going to talk to Mike about how he found himself in that position of his as a director, because he brings a very interesting background to the table. We are so happy that we have Mike Russell with us. And Mike is the Director of Communications with the Cowichan Valley School District here in British Columbia, Canada. So why don't we bring him into screen? So there he is right there. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on, Darren.
Love your hat. However, it should be a white hat. I'm just saying, it should be a white hat. And since I saw you last, you've grown this wonderful beard. Like if I could grow a beard, that would be the beard I would want to grow, right? For sure. So let's everybody know who you are. Who are you? What do you do? How'd you find yourself to where you are today?
Good to see you again. Some people out there might not know, but Darren's an old boss of mine. So we come this honestly here. So
yeah, for sure.
So like you said, I'm the Director of Communications with the Cowichan Valley School District. I have taken a very twisty and unconventional route to get here, shall we say.
So can I mention what that route was that I know? You started as a teacher. Mm-hmm. From a teacher, you went to a police officer in Edmonton. From Edmonton, you came to Victoria to be a police officer. From Victoria, you then became a communications director with a large corporate entity here in British Columbia. And then you came back to policing in Victoria. Then you went back to Edmonton. And then from Edmonton, you now find yourself here as the director. Did I get that right?
I think so. I have it written down flow chart somewhere, I swear.
So continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And that is the route that I've taken. It's been very different. It's been non-conventional, but I found myself in a place where I believe I really fit, and I'm finding so much value in the work that's happening out of the district right now. Yeah. And it's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the questions that I have for you today. And the first question is right here. And the question is, how did social media influence your career development and personal growth, given where you find yourself today? Let's hear what you have to say about that one, Mike.
That's a great question, Darren, and a good one to start off with. And when I'm hearing this question, I don't want to put too much weight into my answer, but it's, you almost say social media may single-handedly be responsible for where I am today. Mm-hmm. Before I started in media, I was a police officer for 5 years. So I'd done time in Edmonton. I had done some time in Victoria. And by done time, I don't mean done time, like hard time. So that's how we know each other in policing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when I started in Victoria as a social media officer, media spokesperson, I had actually never had an iPhone. I didn't have a Twitter account, never had a MySpace, never had a Facebook. And so I start this new role, and all of a sudden I've got these tools at my disposal that really help me amplify the work that I had been doing in policing for the 5 years previous. Uh-huh. The majority of my career has always been in community engagement, and whether that was face-to-face or being out on the beach or the bike section, I had always been doing engagement. And so when I moved into this role, it came with an office. I'm a cop. I didn't have an office. It came with a computer, and it wasn't a shared computer, so I could keep it clean and stuff. So it was really nice. But I wasn't out on the street, so I didn't have that. And social media was my connection to the community, and our organization's connection to the community. And it really flourished during that time. And I was really happy to be a part of it.
It's interesting. Like I knew you before you got into as a patrol officer, right? Before you got into your communications position. And, and all of a sudden when you took over the role as our department's talking head in communications, it was like, who is this guy? Like, oh my, this is a totally different side. Like, wow, right? Like it was like doors open for you or something. Like it's like your true personality all of a sudden came out. Yes, no?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think, one of the small examples is I think we're the first police department to ever be on the front page of Reddit.
Yeah.
We had somebody in our local Victoria subreddit asking where they could buy weed. And I went in there with a simple reply. I just said, asterisk cough. And, all of a sudden everybody went nuts. Hey, the cops are here.
Yeah.
And it was very popular. But having fun and being able to do things like that were so important to, I think, our respect in the community, how we were viewed as an organization, how individual officers were viewed. I think it played a large role in that. And I think, that's been seen since.
One of the things that you said early on, and I think it was one of your monikers, was that you believe that houses losing front porches, was kind of, we were losing that sense of community. And I think you recognize that social media could all of a sudden become that digital front porch. Yeah, no?
That's exactly it. And, I think that might have been the title of my TED Talk. Not even kidding. But
oh, really?
It was around that being our gathering place. And we have seen the switch the shift, I don't say the switch, but the shift in our community to being engaged in many different ways. No time more apparent than right now.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I try to get across to adults right now is a lot of adults still see a difference between the online world and the digital world where the kids don't. In academia, we call it the on-life world now, right? Where it's really just one world. It's no longer two, it's one. And I think you recognize that very early, right? Where you recognize we could no longer treat both differently. We had to integrate the two into one, or what in academia we now call the on-life world. But let's ask you the next question here. The next question for you is, and here it is, from a social media communications perspective, were there different challenges you faced between those in policing and those in the corporate world? Because again, you bring a very much an eclectic path to where you find yourself today. So it really interests me to understand what you see to be the differences, because I really approach this more from a law enforcement perspective, because that's where I come from, although I'm now in the corporate world with our company. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that question.
Yeah. And I gave it a lot of thought. I've been thinking about this question a lot. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a good one. I think the biggest change and the biggest difference I've seen between the two is in policing, it was always the immediate. It was always, or 9 times out of 10, it's responding to a crisis. Yeah. It's getting that information out to the community, and when that all settles, you can start to have a little bit of fun. Yeah. But it was always the crisis in the immediate time.
Yeah.
Whereas here in the Cowichan Valley, it's not the crisis of the immediate anymore. It's not that big thing all the time. Obviously, there are still things that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
But it allows us to be more thoughtful, and I think it allows for a little bit better engagement in terms of being able to be thoughtful about those things. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say people aren't engaged or thoughtful about policing. I think policing is one of those hot button issues that drives a lot of divisiveness amongst social media communities. And you see that all the time online. And I think that, a lot of our parents and community members up here are just very invested in their kids' education, in what education can bring to their community. And so the ability to have those sort of deeper conversations or provide content that reaches a bit of a deeper lesson or delves a little bit more into some different places where, a corporation wouldn't necessarily go.
So I agree with you. Like law enforcement, from a communication standpoint, you're right. It was more about you have to deal with things now, crisis situations, crisis management, and you had to be able to think on the spot and, really, really know your stuff. But I guess another question I have for you, where you find in your position now, what's the biggest challenge you now face as the director of communications within the Cowichan School District? Like, what are some of those challenges?
I think the biggest one is, and this kind of goes back to the conversation before, is whereas a lot of people aren't, personally vested in policing, but they can have an opinion on it. So there's a wide breadth of people that are interested in it.
Right.
Whereas I find very much a shift when you come to education. People are personally vested in it and interested in it. But if they're not personally vested in it, then they don't have that need for that information or that.
So am I hearing you right there when you say that one of your challenges is trying to figure out how to get parents more invested? They are invested, but is one of the challenges to get them more invested into what's going on?
It is. And when you look at when you look at my matrix for the social media, when I'm looking at that, I'm seeing, okay, so I can tell who's looking at my content. I know where that's going. It's not reaching my content, and so we can talk about this a little bit later. What I've done to a little bit of this, but my content isn't reaching our students. I'm on Facebook community, so that actually doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But my content's not reaching our students. It's not reaching. It doesn't tend to reach males. It's typically people who identify as female on Facebook and on our other platforms. So then I give thought onto how to bring our community in. And the nice thing being an educational institution is we can also tackle some issues that are a little bit tougher community-wide. So when we're having, we can have conversations about equity and inequity, and we can bring those to the forefront in how we communicate and talk about the realities of poverty and how that affects communities and then community as a whole. Because we realize that education and a healthy education system is actually a cornerstone to a healthy economy and a healthy democracy.
Absolutely.
So to do that, to get that together and to get people to really invest in that is sometimes a challenge.
Wow, and we'll drill down on a couple of those points a little bit later. Next question I have for you, Mike, and here it is right here, is in your role as the Director of Communications with the Cowichan Valley School District, how are you and your district utilizing social media to stay connected with the entire school community? Kind of challenging right now, right?
It is kind of challenging right now. The one thing that I did early on this year, so last year what I did is I tried a bunch of different ways to see what our community would respond to. Basically, I threw everything I had at the wall and see what stuck. Now, that was my theory for last year. It was my
How unusual for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really good year. I pulled out some really interesting stuff. And then what I did is I went and I engaged with our district student advisory council, our principals and vice principals. I talked to parents and teachers. And then I'm doing some work as well with a group out of the U.S. called Partnership for the Future of Learning. And so through there, I belong to a group called Shared Story. And that is educational advocates, researchers, people on the ground floor like I am. And what I came up with was a storytelling strategy. And that storytelling strategy was a roadmap to lay out how we would best tell the stories of our district while also recognizing that we have as a district and as a community organization a role to play in reconciliation. So truth and reconciliation, right? So how do I wrap all those things up in one?
So for those people who don't know, what do you mean by reconciliation? Because we'll have viewers here from all over the place. So what do you mean by that?
So truth and reconciliation is, it's not, some people view it as a goal, but it is a way to get to recognizing what has happened, the historical inequities in Canada that have been done to our Indigenous population, whether that is things through like the 60s scoop, through many purposeful ways that our government tried to destroy or to negate Indigenous language, culture, heritage. So it's a journey to come to terms with that and to realize what happened. So that's truth and reconciliation.
Perfect. So continue on with this storytelling. And I note behind you, there's a wall that says storytelling behind there, right?
It's my storytelling strategy right there. Yep. Yeah. It's on the wall. It's been given to every principal and vice principal. It's a set of criteria that I look at to ensure that what I'm putting out to the community reaches certain milestones. And we have a very large Indigenous population here in the Cowichan Valley. And so I will be true to that. And through our organization, through our storytelling, I also want to recognize inequalities, historical inequalities, current inequalities, and talk about what we're doing as a district to address that. And sometimes that goes over really well. Sometimes it's challenging conversations, but they're conversations worth having because it helps us continue to bring our community together, helps us continue to learn, and helps us to continue to become whole as a community. And if an educational organization doesn't do that, I don't know what you do.
And that's what leadership is all about, right? I mean, being able to have those tough discussions, although sometimes uncomfortable, they need to be had, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
A question I have for you, just to build upon that a little bit, do other districts in British Columbia have people like you? Or is Cowichan fairly unique in their approach to your position?
No, there are many other communications professionals throughout BC occupying various roles. I think the highest is an executive director down to a communications officer, and they kind of all run that gambit there, but there's quite a number of us.
Excellent. Next question I have for you, Mike. And here it is right here. And the question is, for those who are interested in a career in communications, what are some of your suggestions to help them start their journey into such a career? And the reason I asked that is off camera, I mentioned to you that, as a teacher, I know that you have a degree, right, an educational degree, but do you have any other like traditional educational paperwork behind you? Or like, that's where I want to kind of drill down a little bit deeper.
Yeah, to be honest with you, no, I don't. I don't have any traditional education in terms of communication. What I do have is a very strong commitment to my community, whether that is through the engagement that I did face-to-face as a police officer, the online stuff I do here, or volunteering myself or my family. Together, we're very connected to our communities. Mm-hmm. And so I think that plays a large role into how I've been able to kind of morph that into a career and go along that path. But my advice and recommendations for anybody looking at this path would, I guess, one be don't follow my shoes because it's a very weird path. But people have asked me that before, and I say that I think the best thing is to open yourself up to new experiences and learning new things. I think what I've done in every position I've had is I've always learned something else. Like even here, I'm learning. I have communication, but there are many other facets of the organization I'm learning a lot about, and picking a few of them to really dive deep and learn a lot about. So I can be a contributing member in conversations that are happening around those things. I think that's one of the biggest things: is open yourself up to new experiences. Don't be afraid to say yes. And always be learning. Always be learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're one of many now that I've interviewed who I consider leaders, thought thinkers. Those who like to do things differently. And for a lot of these people who I'm interviewing, much like you, they don't have a traditional like PhD, masters or something. Like they just don't, but yet there are these super leaders within their communities. And so that's one of the things I wanted to kind of hit on a little bit more and drill down a little bit more is, what was it during your career, your path that kind of led you to become the director, right? Like you're the director of communications with a significant school district here. It's not necessarily although education is important, don't get me wrong, but there's not a lot of places that you can go in the world to get a degree in what it is that you're doing right now. And now, having said that, Brandon has got his master's in communications, right? But that's why I wanted to kind of drill down this on a little bit more, because I'm sure that there are going to be people who are watching us right now who maybe don't have money to go to a college or university, but yet they love social media, they love what they're doing, they would love to be doing something like you're doing. So I would just like you to comment a little bit more on that.
Yeah, and definitely, Derek. I think, and I'll talk to my case as more of the example, because it's what I'm familiar with and it's what I know.
Yeah.
You said people who love social media and love communicating that, love your community. If you fall in love with your community, you will be very, very, very successful at a communications job. You get to know the heartbeat of your community. You will know the real life influencers who will definitely help you get where you want to go. You will get to know what the problems are, what the people think the solutions are, and you will be able to find where your organization can fit in that puzzle and provide a key piece. And when you do that, you will be a rock star.
So it's all about relationships, is what you're saying to me. It's
100%.
Not, yeah, for sure. One of the things I saw in policing traditionally was, we're the police, you're not, we know best, so we're going to do what we want to do. And you brought a totally different approach, where you're saying, hold on a second here, we are part of the community. Sir Robert Peel said, police are the community are the police. And relationships were important in policing. But what I'm hearing you say now, that in your position right now, if anything, relationships are just as important or not even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the key to everything. Social media is a tool. It's a mechanism. It is not the be-all, end-all. It is how you can help create those relationships, but it is not going to be the be-all and end-all about those relationships.
Awesome.
I don't know if I talked about them, but my old partner at Victoria Police, Bowen Osoko, I met him over Twitter. That's how I met Bowen. And we became best friends. He ended up getting the job. And we worked together for 3.5 years side by side, doing some amazingly awesome stuff. There's a relationship that started on Twitter as two people chatting, but went into an actual real in life, real in person relationship and working relationship. And it wouldn't have gone to where it would have had it just been on Twitter.
Awesome. Just awesome. Next question I have for you, Mike. Interesting question, which is, where was it here? Here it is, right here. As the director of communications in a school district, as well as past law enforcement professional, what are some of the important messages you would share with students about their social media use?
Yeah, and this is timely. We just set up our district student advisory council with their own independent Instagram account that's tied to our corporate account, and gave them the agency to go out and do good work and let me know how it goes. But it's corporate branded, and so I think for a lot of people, they get a little knot in their throat. That'd be a hiccup, and they say, "Oh, good Lord, did you actually do that?" But yes, we did. And what I told them was, number one, have fun. Social media is fun. You look at things like TikTok with their dance competition. You look at Instagram. There's all sorts of fun things that are happening out there on social media. Have fun. But, and there's always a but be responsible about it. Recognizing that whatever you put out there is out there forever and always. It's just like a love note that you sent out. It's out there forever and always. And that can be used and will be used in the future. Mm-hmm. I've had interviews where I've done an interview with somebody and they brought up something I tweeted 3-4 years ago, a post I put on LinkedIn forever ago. And so being cognizant of that and being careful before you hit the send or the tweet or the post button is something you have to think about.
And how is that project going with the kids right now? I mean, one of the things, I say to a lot of parents is that contrary to popular belief, the majority of our kids are doing super, uber cool things online. They really are. And we older adults need to start acknowledging that fact, right? Too many adults think they're up to all this horrible mischief. Yeah, there's a small percentage that aren't, for sure. But we got to be very careful that we're not tar and feathering that entire generation with the same brush, right? So how's it going with the students, with the project that you're going on? Are you seeing some cool things right now?
It is, and it was funny because they initiated the Instagram account, and they already have 1/3 as many followers as I do, and they've been active for about 6 weeks, and I've been for a year and a half.
Right. So
kudos to them; they're doing good work. But one of the really cool things, and they wanted to use it as a community building tool within their student body, and so Student Advisory Council has representatives from all of our secondary and middle schools here in the Valley, and so they all have access to that account.
Right.
There's another thing that I think some people might think, ooh, everybody's got access to the account. But yes, they all have access. It does come, if there's any hiccups, it is based out of an email from me. I have sort of the end user control on it.
Right.
But they have the ability to be able to do this stuff. So it's fantastic. They're doing a online spirit week right now where students from throughout the district are submitting dances, costumes, all sorts of stuff to kind of buoy everybody's spirits during this time. So that's one thing that's going on right now.
And that's my question. My question is, how have you seen them using it during this COVID-19 to create spirit now that, because, we did a questionnaire with students, we have over 7,000 teens now that follow us. And we asked them, are you guys missing school? And I was expecting a lot of them to go, no. But the large majority are saying, we miss school. In fact, a lot of them are saying what they're missing is the structure that school brought to their lives. right? So it's interesting. So that's why I wanted to drill down just a little bit. This, how are they using what you've given them now during COVID?
Yeah, and a thing like that Spirit Week is definitely something that was one of their first things they wanted to do when they got on there is thinking, and you talked about it, you're like, oh, a lot of teens doing really good work. Their first thought was, how can we as student leaders build community?
And that's so important, because too many times we adults think that we know best. Yeah. Hold on a second here. I think teens and young teens and preteens have a lot to bring to the table if we allow them to do so, because they don't have the same filters that we adults have, and they can think way more asymmetrically than we can, right? For sure. And it's kind of cool to see that they're now doing that with a tool that you gave them, because it's like I say to parents, it's not the app, it's not the platform, it's how people use the platform that can make it desirable or undesirable. And yeah, there's things there that we have to be aware of, but it sounds like you are, excuse the quote, policing what's going on, but there's not a lot of policing that has to take place, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, not at all. And it's a great group of student leaders, and they were motivated, and they brought this to my attention. They wanted to do it, so we just worked to set it up for them.
Is it an open IG account, and can anybody go in and have a look at it?
It is, yeah.
What is it right now? Maybe the viewers might want to have a look and see what your kids are doing.
Yes, Cowichan Schools DSAC, DSAC.
Perfect. Next question I have for you, Mike. COVID-19 has shone a brighter light on the use of social media technology in education. What are some of the lessons learned in Cowichan School District thus far?
Well,
you're welcome.
There have been a lot of lessons learned. One is that, as we know, our kids are probably way more tech savvy than we are. And so that has definitely been a lesson learned. And how do we empower, encourage, and support our teachers to move their learning opportunities online? And it's been a challenge for many, and that's not a bad thing. It's just different. Mm-hmm. It's a very different way that some people have not had to do before. So I think that's the first one. The other challenge that we've found is, although we talk a lot about youth and social media, and there's actually a large amount of our population, or I don't want to say a large amount, but there is an amount of our population who has actually no access to technology. So while we as an organization are switching and moving our learning opportunities to online learning, we're having to give thought about that equity piece and making sure that's front of mind. Is if we're going to do that, how do we ensure that those students and families who don't have access to either the tool or the internet, how do we get that to them? And so we've been working really hard on making sure that we can get Wi-Fi enabled iPads out to over 150 families in the district here. And they now have access to the internet where they can partake and do those online learning exercises.
Just on that, I was talking to another school district where we taught at, and they bus their kids in. A lot of areas where the buses go, they didn't have Wi-Fi. So the school district actually put mobile Wi-Fis into all the school buses. So the school buses will actually drive into the community to drop off lunches and breakfasts. They park the bus there for the rest of the day so that the kids and family can now connect to the Wi-Fi on the bus to give them the access that they were looking for. But, this whole thing on equity is so important, because there still is a digital divide, right? Like you think that a lot of families and kids everybody's on social media. Not necessarily true. And if all of a sudden we've got kids that have access and then kids that don't, there's an inequality there, right? And how do you overcome that?
Not only that,
yeah, go ahead.
That group of kids or families who haven't had access to that, they're going to be some of our kids that are going to need that support more. So when we don't do that, the kids that have access to those tools are going to continue to rise in whatever they're doing, and the other ones aren't going to be able to get and compete with that.
And what video conferencing platform is your school district using right now to communicate lesson plans and stuff with the teachers?
So we use two primarily. We're using the Canadian-based Zoom, and we're also using Microsoft Teams. So those are our two.
And have you guys had any issues with either of those platforms right now?
No.
Yeah, excellent. It's like I said, it's interesting. We asked the kids. One of the things, we did a huge interview with teens as this thing was starting. One of one of the frustrations they had was that a lot of teachers in their school, each one was using a different platform. So like they were having to learn how to use 4 or 5 different platforms. So one of the things they said is if teachers could narrow it down to 1 or 2, that would make life a little easier. And here's the other thing the kids said that was really cool. We are more than willing to give teachers buys on a lot of this, student passes, because you know what? They're learning this. We understand they're going to make mistakes. We know that. So don't be too hard on yourselves, teachers, if all of a sudden you're not as perfect as you are in the classroom, if there's any such thing, as you are. So it's really interesting when we listen to the teens saying to us as well, no, we get it. We don't expect teachers to be to make mistakes. And in fact, some teachers are allowing the kids to teach them how to use things like Zoom and properly. Like I read one thing from one teen who said, you know, I recommended to my teacher, if they want to learn how to teach on Zoom, go to YouTube and watch some of the influencers, the real good influencers, and how they use YouTube to capture and hold attention. Like I watched, I partaked in a Zoom conference yesterday. I was a learning one, and all the screens were up, and there were people who were falling asleep in the Zoom meeting. Like it's like, and now you've lost your message, you've now lost your audience and stuff, and it's all because the presenter was very monotone in front of the camera with no background at all to capture attention. It was like, oh, the content, the information was good, but the delivery wasn't. So it's really kind of cool to see how teachers are now allowing teens to become the teacher and the teachers now becoming the student. Comments on that, Mike?
Yeah, and you know, we do see that, and it's great. It shows what trust there is in that relationship.
Absolutely.
That's a thing that some people don't clue on when they think of that.
Yeah.
There's a trust and vulnerability. And so for the teacher to be able to say, you know what, I do need your help, I think that's great and speaks a lot to how invested teachers are with their students.
And it's so cool to see what they're coming up with together. Like it is amazing to see some of the stuff that's now coming out of this for sure. Next question I have for you, Mike, and here's the question. Post-COVID-19, how do you think the use of social media will play a different role in the public, private, and corporate world?
Yeah, this is a tough one. And it's been a challenge to... And I'm not the only organization or person to think this, but it's been a challenge to have accurate and timely information be absorbed by the people who need to absorb it. Whether that is medical information or information on returning to schools to help with food programs or essential service worker children. It's been a challenge to have those those true voices with good information come to the forefront. They're getting drowned out a lot by a lot of misinformation and mistruths. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that there might be some way to see a switch or a shift in that in a way to help, because that information is toxic. It's that information really doesn't help anybody's communities. It doesn't help people along their path of what might be, you know, from grieving the loss of their spring break or school trips or graduations to moving into accepting and moving into flourishing under these new circumstances. So all of that information is really a takeaway. It really eats at progress that can be made there. Mm-hmm. So I'd hope that there would be changes to that. But how logistically, like how do I think it will actually change? I'm hoping that people will find their trusted sources and find actual trusted sources and start to latch on to them a little bit more rather than taking information with sort of that shotgun approach.
You know, I'm not an educator. I don't work in the school districts. I do present. But, you know, I think if there's anything that COVID has shown us is that the need for face-to-face instruction in a classroom, you'll never be able to get rid of that. Ever. I know that there was a movement to try and move more things online, but online learning and stuff. But I think out of this, it's now showing us that human element, face to face, in person, rather than just digital, is such a needed component that is missing right now, for sure. But I do think that digital can be a really good adjunct to learning, right? There's no doubt about it. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing that COVID is now showing us is how important schools are in family life as well, and how big of a role they play within family life. I think that's another thing that we're seeing out of this. And a third thing, I was talking to another individual who's in the corporate world, and he said to me, he goes, how it's going to change my opinion. You know, prior to COVID, I was renting this building for $2.5 million a year to house 30 employees in little offices behind computers. Well, I've just proven to myself that they can do the same work at home, if not better from home. So why pay $2 million in a lease a year when I can have these people do the same work at home and now put that $2 million back into the company or give it to the workers? Like, those are some of the changes I'm seeing. But I'm more interested from you on the issue of what I just said with respect to the human element of teaching and how important I think this event has shown us how schools do play a significant role in family lives.
Yeah, teaching's done a lot with the heart. And to say that can be done over a screen it's not true. There's all sorts of examples of not only online learning, but great in-person learning still happening now. I just went and visited a teacher out in Lake Cowichan. She's the kindergarten teacher in Lake Cowichan.
Yeah.
And she spends her weeks going house to house to house to all her kids and has socially distant visits. She does tap dancing with the kids. She plays ukuleles. When she's not out doing that stuff, they come to her house and sit on her porch and get books read to them. One by one, they come do books. They get math. Teaching is done in the heart. And it's so important to recognize that. But also recognize that there are some kids who are flourishing in this. And this is what they needed to realize that, holy crow, I might not have been doing so good in school. I might not have been reaching my capacity or getting up and getting that innovation and those exciting things happening. But being at home, being allowed to sleep until 9, being allowed to be able to work till 7 at night on school stuff, that is changing some kids' perspectives on it. And I think that's huge. I don't think we can lose that.
Can we drill down on that one a little bit deeper? So what you're telling me is that there's a segment of your population of students that because they're now at home and learning digitally, they are flourishing far better than they did when they were in the classroom?
There's certainly kids that are finding this a welcome change, and not because of problems in the classroom or things like that, but this is how they learn. You have to recognize that there's so many different learning styles, right? And some kids will just learn really good under this style. And there could be a myriad of factors that affect that. But, if they're finding success, I'm happy for that. And
maybe that's another lesson learned out of this, is understanding that there are all kinds of different modalities of learning. And in the classroom, it does kind of get to a cookie cut approach to a point, right? Because just the way, and there's certain ways that students learn. And so understanding that may be another lesson learned out of this event. Yes, no?
Absolutely, yeah. And just really being able to look at some of the innovative stuff that teachers are doing and they're saying, you know what, maybe this is something I want to bring into my classroom. Right?
Very interesting. Next question. I love this question. Who are some of the social media influencers you follow, and why do you follow them?
Well, there's this group called the White Hatter Team.
Good answer. Although you should be wearing a white hat right now.
He was my boss before, so I kind of have to.
Go ahead. Let's hear your thoughts. Well, thank you for the shout out, by the way. But really, yes. Who do you follow, my friend?
But and in all seriousness, privacy of our students and the information is something that I'm very passionate about. So yes, your team is one that I do follow regularly for all the updates, and all members of your team too, individually, not just your White Hatter.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that. Yeah. I wanted to kind of take this away, and I hope that's okay with you, a little bit from influencers, over time to what I'm seeing during COVID. Okay. And so I guess the biggest thing I want to do is give a shout out to all the creators, the artists, the amount of soul that they have brought into, I know, my family as we sit and stay in our houses most of the time. You listen to Jan Arden on Instagram. My favorite artist, Sean Rao, he's got, not only does he have his house concerts that he's doing, he's got foraging videos and cooking shows. Oliver Jeffers, a wonderful artist and an illustrator and author, and he's reading his books out loud to kids and doing artwork online. and hundreds and hundreds of others. And we're seeing this really, the creative movement is not stifled by this. The unfortunate part is that we see that their source of income is stifled by it, which is unfortunate, as because those performers, they rely on being in person or something like that. But a huge shout out to all those creators who are sharing their wonderful gifts with our communities and our families who are in their homes.
So just listening to your comments there, I heard the word forging, and you had this little glow come about you. Are you getting involved in forging now?
No, I'm not.
Next question. Great comments. And, I thank you for recognizing what artists are doing, because like you, I follow a number of them right now, and it's just amazing to see what they do. Do you see what just happened in New York, where they did the Robin Hood project there in New York? All the artists came in less, like in an hour or something, they raised $115 million. Like unbelievable, to donate back into their community in New York to help them recover from COVID. So next question I have for you, Mike. Here it is. What do you miss the most from your past career in policing? And the second part is, what do you like the most about your current role with the Cowichan School District?
Well, there's a lot of things I miss in policing. Fast cars was fun. Being with your partner at 3 a.m. on some drowsy street, and you're just laughing like you've never laughed in your life before, and you'll remember that from the days back in the cars, Darren. Like, there are some experiences you'll just never have again. But I think ultimately the thing I miss most about policing is the people, and I mean that in terms of my old colleagues, who I do miss. There's a lot of great friends that I've made on the force through my time there. But also the people I meet on the street. Like I said, I walked the beat for many years in both Victoria and Edmonton. And to take the time to go listen to some stories, to get to know people's names, to get to know what makes them tick, and to be a personal face to that uniform, I think that is the thing I miss the most about it.
So it sounds like you just segued back to that sign that's right behind you saying storytelling.
Yeah, right? That's exactly. It's all come that direction. Is really being interested, invested, and caring about your community, hearing those stories, because everybody has one.
They certainly do.
And to take that time it's not even for them to give you that gift. I was going to say it the other way around, to give them the gift of that time to stop, but that's not it. It's for them to trust you and give you that gift of telling you their story is something huge, and I do miss that a lot. Yeah,
I'm not going to lie to you. One of the things I miss is the chase, right? Getting the bad guy, right? But really, that was about 2% of what we did in policing. The rest was community storytelling. Like you, I loved sitting down with individuals who are part of the street family and listening to their stories and what got them to where they were today. And, it was just amazing. And the relationships that were built just by doing that. And it's interesting, right? Because the old timers, you'll remember this, they said to people like us, you're a rarity, because most of these youngins that are coming in now, they don't want to hear anything about us, right? So it's all about building those relationships again.
It is.
And what about your position now? What do you love most about what you're doing now?
I have almost unlimited ability to be creative. I have the trust of my colleagues and the senior team to do what's right, to tell the right stories. I have the ability to do those things and to take the approaches that I think are going to be best. And it's fantastic. It allows you to be more creative and allows you to keep pushing those boundaries.
Last question I have for you, Mike, which is, what are your final thoughts specific to social media safety and digital literacy while we navigate this world-changing event called COVID? What are some of your thoughts? And any other closing statements you'd love to make?
Yeah, I hope that people start to really realize what information they're sharing and where that goes. I really want people to have that sort of information. I take personal safety of my students' information very, very safe, very, very high. I do so many things to make sure, like if I take pictures out of a school, I come back, I put them on my computer, I delete them off that disk before that camera goes anywhere. So that's physical information that I have total control of, but I'm still being careful. What if that camera gets lost and I've got 300 pictures of kids on it?
Yeah.
Not acceptable. So these are little steps that I take, but I would love for people to be more aware of where that information is going, who controls that information, right? If you don't have access to it, you can't delete it, you don't own it.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you're taking those steps. So I think that would be a huge thing that I'd love to see. And I think people are starting to see that conversation crop up a little more when we talk about contact tracing apps and things like that in relation to COVID. And I hope those conversations continue more to the general public.
In what way, Mike?
I'd like to see more people just being aware of what information it is that they're sharing, what harms can befall them because they're sharing too much. You know, I give a perfect example, and I do some social media safety talks to our staff here. I say, great, you know, I'm so happy that you're out in Mexico on spring break, but that picture you posted at Christmas in front of your house with your address on it, and now your picture of you being in Mexico, now I know that you're gone for 2 weeks, and you've just given me that information. So it's not even all that behind the scenes metadata, location data, any of that is simple things about what you're actually sharing online.
What are your thoughts on the implementation of the COVID-19 using technology, i.e. Apple and Google working together? I'll be honest with you, it makes me feel really nervous.
Yeah, and you know, I sit much with you and your team. I'm not a huge proponent of that. I don't want my information shared like that. I'm happy to help out my community in any way. You know, I filled out the COVID-19 survey that the BC government just asked about yesterday. Already filled it out. Already volunteered to go get tested for virology. All that. I'm done. Like, I will help out with that, but I will not be putting an app on my phone.
Yeah, neither will I. Are you still involved in the biking community? Love your shirt, by the way. I see you in the biking community. Are you still involved in it?
Yeah, it's a very small community up here, basically my family. So yes, we're involved in it.
Good to hear. And make sure you say hi to your wife and your kids for me as well. So stick around because I just want to debrief a little bit at the end here, Mike. But just to end, I want to thank everybody for attending today's Thinkable Thursday. Mike he's just a great guy. Like, he really is. I really got to know him in his position when he was working at the police department. He says, you know, I work for you. No, he didn't. I mean, we worked together as a team. It was really cool to see what he did and where he's now found himself in his career in life, right? I think it's really, really cool. So on behalf of myself, I'm Darren and the White Hatter team, Brandon, who's working behind the control booth. Thank you for tuning in to today's Thinkable Thursday, and can't wait to share the next one with you next week. Bye now.